Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. My name is Preacher Mars, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope that you're having a wonderful Thursday. Normally on our Thursdays, what we like to do is do a little retro thing. We used to call it Throwback Thursday, but today is a special Thursday. This is a bit of a celebration, brothers and sisters. We lost somebody yesterday. We lost somebody who was a literary giant to myself, and I want to say thousands, if not millions, of other people in terms of her writing, her cultural critique, her aspects about gender, race, white supremacy, and this is from a woman who grew up in Tennessee, not Tennessee, I'm sorry, grew up in Kentucky, the hills of Kentucky, who started out in segregated schools and moved throughout the educational process, being a writer and a professor, and someone that I would come in contact with when I began teaching in Long Beach. I'm going to get to that story. But I'm talking about Bell Hooks, who passed away at the age of 69. When we say the word genius, or when we say the word visionary, I hate for it to be thrown out there with a certain type of arrogance or light regard, if you will. Bell Hooks was someone who explained to me, a young black man, what I was lacking in my life, and she put it through the prism of a black woman, through the prism of feminism, but specifically, what the black woman meant to society in contemporary times and in past times. And she developed this amazing pecking order and pedagogy of how it affected me, how I would look at my mother and how I look at my grandmother, how you look at your sister, your wife, your aunt, how you would look at womanhood as an overall theme running throughout the history of time. And she had the finesse, she had the nuance to be able to bring it to a space where it allowed you, just for a minute, to stop, look around, appreciate, question, and then engage. Bell Hooks, born in Kentucky, and I tell you, it was several years ago. I was speaking. I actually got to speak at the college where she was teaching, Berea University. I think they changed the name, but it was Berea College back then, and she was a professor there. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I'd love to tell you that I got to get to the college and got to spend time with Bell Hooks at her feet and learn about these things, but I didn't. I was there for a day. But I want to tell you the energy that I felt going to this institution, knowing that she was an instructor there, knowing that she was giving out information and sharing knowledge, and she was a scholar that was accessible. It was exciting. And to go to a place, Berea, Kentucky, but this is not New York. This is not Harvard or Princeton or Stanford or any of these schools. This was a little school. And she legitimately had come home to teach to her community. She was well loved, she was well respected. I think part of this show needs to be talking about some of her concepts and why she was important. But the other part of the show needs to be directed towards the fact that she left us she left us work. At age 69, she left us work. She made compelling arguments which she answered for herself, and we were privileged to sit there and watch her develop. But she left us questions that we need to answer for ourselves. Questions that were developed, questions that had so much to do with what you see now in politics and popular culture. I remember watching her on an interview talk about feminism, and she said Beyonce is a terrorist. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then she sat there and explained why she thought Beyonce was a terrorist. She said because there are not popular, well meaning men, iconic men attacking feminism. He was like, it's our women that are attacking feminism. Speaking on something of which, number one, they don't understand, and number two, they have not earned the right to speak about. I was floored. But it was that type of honesty, brothers and sisters, that really, and I said this earlier in a conversation on text with several friends. I said, Bell Hooks affected me to the point where it readjusted my comedy lens. Let me say that again. It readjusted my comedy lens. And let me even go further. It adjusted my Islamic lens. Now there are gonna be some detractors that say, "Hey, her gender, she was lesbian, or da da da." You can go through all of that, but she was meaningful, she was purposeful, and a lot of the times in her arguments, she was right. And sometimes, brothers and sisters, you have to take from the lessons of people who may not look like you, may not sound like you, particularly when they're right. Because when they're right, they've usurped all the things that you've thrown out there to not like them, or not believe in them, not engage in them. They've gone beyond that. They transcended. The things they say that you may have in conflict or you may have a problem with, these are the things you need to hear to have a dialogue whereby you can actually talk about some of the problems, some of the issues that are surrounding us. I'm Preacher Moss. We're talking about the genius of bell hooks, celebrating the genius of bell hooks on the Shout Out Show. Let's go ahead and get it started. All right, we're back. We are celebrating the genius of bell hooks. Noted author, noted activist, noted cultural critic. She was so many things. A lot of times when you go through people's writing, you'll get information. You'll glean information. You say, that was really good. I could use that. But it seemed like every book that she wrote, it felt like I was sitting down and she was right there and we were having a conversation out of the book. Like the book spoke to me. And I'm not saying that I agree with everything, but it challenged me to think differently. It challenged me to think differently, and I appreciate that so much about the authors and some of the things. And it, like I said earlier, it made me a better comedian. It changed the way I actually thought. Now, we're going to get to bell hooks in a minute. I don't want to be rude. We got people in the building, better known as the Shout Out family, Shout Out Show soldiers. I appreciate you guys coming on and celebrating the genius of bell hooks with me. I appreciate you. Let's go and get them up, Satana. Who we got today? Of course, we got Sister Ree. Sister Ree, if you're over there in that house, you better order yourself on Amazon a book from Sister Bell Hooks. I would start by saying, Order Ain't I a Woman by Bell Hooks, Black Feminism and Relevance. The Relevance of Black Feminism. Check that book out. It is a killer. On top of that, though, I hope that you and your family are doing well. Brother Derek and Brother Juwan, everybody's doing well over there. Peace and blessings to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Next up, my main man, Altaf Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I fixed that thing. I saw your note about the Facebook notification. I hope you got it today, brother. I tried to stay on top of it. I do read those comments. I just want you to know. So thank you so much for coming on. Always on time. It's 6 o'clock straight up, straight down. And we appreciate your concern. Not just your concern, but just a concern about the flow of the show. Also, it's just nice that you check in and that you support. You support an idea. You support a concept. And that means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to my team. So we appreciate you also. We appreciate you also being the Canadian ambassador to the show. Next up, Bilal Salahuddin. I know you didn't jump on here without Sister Sonia on here. I'm just messing with you, brother. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I appreciate you, brother Bilal, for joining us, being a part of the Shout Out Show family. Tell your significant other she's a part of the family too. Don't be like that. The family that watches the Shout Out Show together is the family that stays together. I just made that up. Next up, my main man Eric. I know Eric is the Christian pronunciation. I'm gonna give you the DC pronunciation. It's Eric Carter. Eric. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, man. Appreciate you coming on the show. Hope you get glean some of this information. I'm gonna try and share it. So please, everybody, make the dua for me, because bell hooks is a giant, and I'm just trying to get it done as best I can. Next up, we got Johnny L. Thomas. What's going on, JT? Little brother, thank you so much for joining the show. We are talking about bell hooks today, so you might want to get Yolanda and Mama and Vivian in unison, everybody, and Aunt Mamie to the TV screen. We talking about bell hooks. We talking about a giant today who we just lost yesterday. All right. Good to see you on the show. Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Next up, we got Sister Satana, Permissible Laughter. What's going on? Our consultant producer, and we are looking for Sister Satana to actually come on the show today and share some of her insights on bell hooks. She actually was the one that gave me the link that let me know that bell hooks had passed away. Sad, but I tried to turn it around and just say, we're going to celebrate this lady. It's rare that in terms of women that we really get to celebrate genius. We'll get the Maya Angelou's, alhamdulillah, and we'll get the Toni Morrisons, but to have Bell Hooks was interesting because she was not just a poet, she was that cultural critic who investigated things about, patriarchy and white supremacy and gender and love and compassion and forgiveness. And I mean, it's amazing what this woman was able to cover. Plus, she was a prolific author. Over 30 books, brothers and sisters. 30 books that this woman wrote. Okay, and we got Sister Mary Moss. Let me see what she's talking about. Thanks for going deep on Sis. Sis Hooks expounded on her well beyond light stuff about her. Yeah, we're going to get deep. We are going to get deep. Thank you so much for joining the show. Mama San, we appreciate you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show what they showed on NBC today. I thought it was a really good piece. Satana's going to cue us up. I thought it was a really good piece that they put up, and we're gonna talk about it. Go ahead, Stan. Let's go ahead full screen.
One of the godmothers of modern black feminism. Bell Hooks was an acclaimed writer, activist, thinker, and professor. She published more than 30 books, including All About Love. Her first book, Ain't I a Woman?, is widely recognized as a major feminist work. Bell Hooks wrote on a wide range of topics: gender studies, class struggle, American history, and what she called the life-changing power of love.
One of the ideas that was really hard for people to accept was that if somebody is abusing you, they're not loving you. I mean, you would think that would be a basic understanding most of us would have. But in fact, so many of us have been wounded in some way in our childhoods that we really need to cling to the idea that if someone hurts you, they can.
If somebody is abusing you, they are not loving you. We asked for your thoughts on how her work impacted you. Easy to see why it's so impactful. Roberto wrote on Facebook, Dr. Hooks was smart, funny, challenging, and had a unique way of educating everyone about themselves without ever being intrusive. Then we got this collage on Facebook. Check this out. Kassam wrote, my partner and I were very close to her. She was my sister friend and mentor. She was brilliant with a heart of gold. Shelley Gil-Ilan tweeted, I met Bell Hooks through her books. As a 40-something college freshman taking women's studies in 1998, her writings changed my life. And producer and director Ava DuVernay posted this tribute on Twitter, Bell Hooks, your garden was dazzling and will continue to bloom. Thank you. One thing that always stood out about Bell Hooks was how she wrote her name, always in lowercase letters. Her given name is Gloria Jean Watkins. Bell Hooks is her pen name in honor of her great-grandmother. She said that the lowercase letters are to make people focus more on her work than on her. Dr. Bell Hooks died today surrounded by her family in her native Kentucky. She lived to be 69.
What are you doing? I get introduced to bell hooks when I first started teaching school, severely most disturbed kids in Long Beach Unified School District. I had a co-worker, wonderful lady, amazing teacher. Her name was Griselda Mesa. Griselda Mesa. And Griselda was kind of quiet. We would hang out, go to movies sometimes, catch dinner. I was a young teacher. She's trying to show me around Long Beach. I was going through it, of course, with my students, but this time I wasn't, a rookie teacher. I was going through it, just trying to adjust to California. Her sisters, Marcella Richardson. I mean, they all worked at the same school. They just tried to include me, make sure I wouldn't sit home alone a lot of times. And I got into a conversation with Sister Griselda about racism, and it followed an incident that happened at the school. And the incident that happened at the school was a child in my classroom essentially was removed from the classroom because the idea that people had not really taken care of this child along the way. It would blow back on the school. The school had dropped the ball on a lot of things, and when you get a file, sometimes you go, why wasn't this taken care of? Why wasn't this taken care of? And the student was a young female, African American. And the questions began to abound about this young girl because the further and further you go back, the atrocities were even worse, the trauma outside of school and the trauma that was visited on her in school. And I was railing. I was 100% railing. And on one of these rants, I guess Sister Griselda got very upset. And she said, have you read Bell Hooks? Now, at this point in time, I hadn't read Ain't I a Woman Yet, which comes from the great speech from Sojourner Truth. She goes, you haven't read her. I said, no. She said, but you're on this rant about black women. I said, yeah. And she says, well, that's a fundamental problem. And I said, well, what are you talking about? Because she was Latina. And I'm like, well, you Latina. She's like, you don't understand. And so she gave me a book by Bell Hooks. And the name of that book, brothers and sisters, was called Outlaw Culture. It was called Outlaw Culture. And for the first time in my life, upon reading this book, I found out I was guilty. As a part of the male race, I found out that I was somewhat guilty. That, in my estimation, while we talk about white privilege, there's such a thing called male privilege. And Sister Bell Hooks took me to task page by page by page by page by page. And she talked about Ice Cube, she talked about Bassett, and she talked about these people with black pagans or white opportunists, and it was like, oh my gosh, where's this lady been my whole life? And just when you think you're going to get socked in the mouth again, she has a chapter in this book that says, the way you can help black women, the way you can help women, period, is you have to love yourself a lot more. And you have to show them that you love themselves, because that's what they're looking for. A man that loves himself is a man that can love them. We can love our mistakes to ourselves, and we can love other people's mistakes. And I was like, this is revolutionary. Because if you think about it, all the talk about Islam and these conferences and stuff like that, nobody really came out and said Isna or Ikna or Mass or what. Nobody said, all you Muslim brothers, take a step back, love yourself more so that you can love the women in your community. He said that was the only, she said that's the only way you could be effective. And I'm like, where's this compassion coming from? And as I read that, I got another book called Killing Rage that talk about racism in America. And it opened me up, brothers and sisters, to the fact that, there are different levels of racism. One of the things she said that's even very, very applicable right now, because we talk about the Trump movement and things like that, and make America great again. She talked about white supremacy. And here's the thing she said that said, this is why we're going to celebrate the genius of Bell Hooks. She said, take the race thing, that's not going to go anywhere. She said, focus on the trauma. Focus on the trauma that's been visited upon you and your people and your ancestors. Focus on that. I understand that trauma has not been resolved. And the curse of unresolved trauma is you take it other places. And it doesn't look like trauma. It looks like I'm right. It looks like laws. It looks like economic advantage. It looks like voting. And I'm like, this woman is a genius. Brothers and sisters, she was the first one to coin. And I've even talked about it on this show. She was the first one to coin the fact that white supremacy is not exclusive to white people. And what she said was, and it's very, very important and powerful and impactful, and I don't want anybody to miss this, but she said to me, and a lot of people that read her book, particularly men, a lot of men don't fess up about reading bell hooks. I know a lot do because I talk about them all the time. But she said something that was really, really interesting. And she talked about white supremacy. She said the danger of white supremacy is you think that you're not a part of it. She said you are a part of it. That is the functionality of white supremacy. It is a predatory concept in its essence. She said, but here's the thing you need to know. She said the danger of white supremacy, like the danger of patriarchy. We haven't even gotten to patriarchy yet. She said the danger of white supremacy is as a part of this environment, this ecosystem, because you're not separated from it. She said the danger of it is if you're not a part of white supremacy, what it demands of you not being a part of it, if it can't kill you, then it demands that you kill parts of yourself. That you're effectively emotionally new to yourself, where you become cold, where you become callous, where you're not feeling and there's no empathy. And that, brothers and sisters, is what's supposed to be an example of a man here in the United States. That's supposed to be the model of a strong man. Not a man that has emotions, not a man that's in touch with his feminine side, but this altered, neutered, broken individual example of masculinity. And that's, brothers and sisters, what white supremacy demands of us. And she says we have to be careful. Because again, if that's the example that you are, particularly for African American men, then we're no good to our children, we're no good to our wives, we're not good because we're not whole people. Think about that. She had a thing, boy. She was a beast. And I'm going to say she was hard on brothers. But she said, if you think about the psychosis of white supremacy, that a black man goes out to work or in the world, and he gets beaten down by white supremacy, and he comes home and he emulates his oppressor, but his feelings and his actions are acted out upon that black woman. In essence, he said, while the black man deals with white supremacy, he said the black woman, the Latino woman, women in general, deal with two oppressors. You deal with white supremacy, and then you deal with patriarchy. So one is race, and one is gender. And that talk about gender is a thing that really grew a lot of ideas that I have in my heart and my spirit, and really how I treat people, how I address people. You know, the thing about bell hooks that shouldn't be lost is that she was free giving. When I say free giving, she at no point in time had absolutely no problem with displeasing white women in her writing. She took joy in it. She framed white feminism in a way going, while you pull black women into the fold to make your numbers bigger, you still go back to that white oppressor. Sound familiar? I tell you what it sounds like, brothers and sisters. That was the 2016 election. That's how Trump won. Well, I've been barking for a minute. Satana, come on in. Love to get your take on our sister Bell Hooks. I'm a huge Bell Hooks fan. Satana, let's welcome Satana to the show, everybody. Satana, what do you think about this woman behind me? As a writer and a comedian, her writing is par excellence. I read her books. I highlight her books. I've taken concepts from her books and spoken to large groups. I've reframed some of them for current times. We're talking about this right now. If you really want to look at white supremacy in action, talking about those people that are neutered and cut off emotionally, those are the people that actually attacked the Capitol.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That I mean, she's prolific, and in some regards prophetic in the idea that she knows that the bond or the I want to say the litmus test is how much compassion you have, how much love you have when it matters.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So one of first, let me give the greetings to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So one of the things of bell hooks, and I was never really into the feminist movement, if I could say that. But one thing that put me off was how, and we talked about it, right? White women never included black women in
Yes.
this effort, right? And so this was one thing that always troubled me. If you call yourself a feminist, you call yourself you want to empower women, then how do you leave out a segment of women? And so I could never understand that. So what Bell Hooks did was that you're right. She called out white women, um, and that how are you leaving out black women in this cause? Black women basically started
Feminine movement.
the
I mean,
feminine movement.
basically,
Basically, the feminine
essentially,
movement. Yes,
she called white
yes,
feminism. She says
yes.
you're not organic.
We
She literally goes, "You're not
you know,
organic
exactly, and so
because you go home to your
you
oppressor."
go to your own, exactly, and we're still right. Exactly, you go home. You're absolutely right. You go home to you, but you also bring your traits of the oppressor into the movement, and then you apply it to everyone else.
Well, they
So,
bear the children of the oppressor.
right,
Well,
right, exactly. Eh,
how and then you stand by and deny and watch the oppressor do these things, which is when
and
I'm
don't speak
reading it,
up.
I'm like, look, I'm like, oh hell no, yeah. You're reading and crying at the same time, like,
Right, right.
because and please feel free to jump on this. I mean, she took people to task.
Sure.
The Rachel, the Rachel Dolezans. I really wish she wrote on a white woman who dressed up, pretended black to be a part of to head a black organization. I wish she was in her prime, and
Yeah.
I wish she was 20, 30 years old, just to shred this whole thing. Because even though we talk about it and we laugh about it, Satana, nothing was done.
Nothing was done.
Nothing
Nothing
was
at
done.
all. At all.
And
Mm-mm.
we lack the temerity to call these things out.
Right.
We have a
Right.
situation in our own Muslim community. You sent it to me.
Oh man.
We have a leader of a Muslim organization, CARE,
Huge.
in Ohio, who
Yeah.
had been working there from 2004. They do a forensics thing to find out this guy's been giving out information to anti-Muslim
Anti-Muslim
organizations
organizations
while he's pulling a check
since 2004.
since 2000. And we hear absolutely nothing. And I'm going to tell you why you don't hear absolutely nothing. And they won't say this, but CARE as an organization has some issues about women empowerment. They do. They've always had that. They have not been able to hold on to some folks, and it's not everywhere. But I bet you it's this. This is how this guy holds on to his job.
Hmm.
This is how a guy holds on to his job. I'm gonna tell
Yeah.
you something. Um, I worked in a lot of offices with females, with women.
Hmm.
What I always liked is good, bad, and in between. You're gonna have to pull something on the table. There's not this whole thing about subtlety. You know what I mean? And when I say there's not this whole thing about subtlety, it means like you can't be subtle when what you're doing affects everybody.
Right.
You've heard me talk about Miss Jones ad nauseum, my sixth grade teacher. Miss Jones was a strong black feminist character in my life because she didn't leave this whole idea to subtlety. Because if you're dealing with subtlety, you're not dealing with talking the truth.
The issues. Right.
Yeah, my mom has a law degree. My aunt's a lawyer. And you had these visions But I can honestly say, yeah, in the 70s and stuff, they struggled because it wasn't their place. There weren't enough people to make the case about being a lawyer, or there wasn't be enough case about being a police officer or police chief or things like that. And they had to work through all this male inertia, if you will, of
Mm.
people who were less talented, people who were overpaid, to get to a point not to be able to get paid, but just to be acknowledged, not hired, but
Hmm.
acknowledged. And it's the same thing in academia. I mean, people are not really going to understand what she meant to black academia. I'm not academia overall. Forget black academia. Academia overall. I mean, she got a BA at Stanford. She got a master's, of course, at University of Wisconsin, Madison, and I've been there a bunch of times before too. But I'm just talking about, I wanted to do a show about who are our black leaders now, but
Yeah.
I'm like, who are black intellectuals right now? We're not
Right.
turning them out like we used to.
Not at all.
Satana, you
And
jump in.
I also think about like the Me Too movement, right? And so that was, the initial um, parts of the movement was started by Black women, but it became something else, right? It became something else. It
Speak on it.
became, yeah,
Speak on
it
it.
became something else, and then it was this whole gentrified movement that now looked at, oh, the woe is me, right? It wasn't um, organic, right?
Yeah.
Because again, the women who were involved in it now had actually been successful, and so now it's like, okay, now I want to. I'm not gonna say, I won't say it, but now you want to, now you're taking the time 30 years later to say this has been a situation, right?
Well,
But you've
yeah.
succeeded in this, and not only that, you haven't. And the reason why that it really ticks me off is because along the way you could have saved people behind you who were going through the same situation.
Well, I think the thing also is in there, in the rush, if you will, to be this new black movement, Black Lives Matter, there was a actual severing of people like Bell Hooks.
Mm.
She was not consulted. The cultural giants, the cultural critics, if you will, that really offered this thing. You've seen me talk about Black Lives Matter, what I thought about it, and I said, hey, well, I can look at it and off of Bell Hooks, I can say, well, wait a minute, this thing it's anti-family, it's
Mm.
anti-family, it's anti-black history, it's anti-black woman. Why do I say it's anti-black woman? Because the black woman was not featured in Black Lives Matter. It was a certain type, and you start getting into
I see.
the names of people, the terms for people who are heterosexual. Like now you're cissexual, which means that now that your sex, if you're a man, not a man, no, oh my gosh, if you're straight, if you're heterosexual, somehow you are oppressing those who are not heterosexual.
Yeah.
I
This
thought it would be
the
amazing if she wrote something about that because it was the flipping over. That
Mhm.
gender argument that she was talking about was not supposed to be exclusionary. It was supposed to be
Right.
everybody comes to the table and have
Right.
this meal of conversation.
Right.
And it was
Right.
not that. I don't even know where feminism is these days. I mean,
Or
now
what
you
it
have
is.
feminism, but it's
No.
coupled in the conversation with transgender men.
Yes.
How does that happen?
Yes. I don't know. I don't know.
But
That's that. I think that really needs to be dissected. That's a whole um, area that you know.
tough
I was.
areas, tough
Yeah,
areas.
it's a tough area. It is. It
Well,
is
look, I
for
know
sure.
we are over, and I knew we were
Yeah.
going to be over. So I apologize, everybody. Appreciate you. People got to jump off. They got lives to get to. I understand. Children, husbands, wives, all of that. Dinner to cook. Mail to go through. Just family bonding time, if you will. I apologize. So, look, let's go ahead and wrap up, Satana. I appreciate you guys coming on and celebrating the genius of bell hooks with me. This probably should have been an hour show. That's on me. So we want to give a shout out to our sponsors, BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. You can call 202, my eyes are bad, 508 3780. Again, that's 202-508-3780. Brothers and sisters, again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. All right, if you're interested in getting a quality graduate level education, look no further than Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Located in Claremont, California, they have one of the best online programs that's out there. If you are out there working, you still want to get your master's, think of it like this. I got my master's, I toured, I went overseas, I did everything, but they work with me, brothers and sisters, to make sure that I could secure my master's in Islamic education. Now, if they could do it with me, they could definitely do it with you. Go to Band Online, check out their curriculum, check out some of the lectures they have on there. Invest in you. They have programs in Islamic education, as I said earlier, Islamic studies, Islamic leadership, and also one of the best programs, the Masters of Divinity program with a specialty in Muslim chaplaincy. Check it out. And last but not least, we want to give a shout out to our newest sponsor, Convenient Urgent Care. You can go to www.convenienturgent. Again, that's www.convenienturgent and check them out. They're in the city of Houston, 3 locations: Cypress, Pasadena, and Houston on Parker Road. So listen, everybody, you've been amazing. We're going to come back on Monday. Let me give you a tip. We're actually going to talk about this care thing at length because I think it's a bigger issue about how we are strategizing to deal with Islamophobia, but also how this Islamophobia has taken away from the space of understanding racism and hatred and xenophobia and things like that. All right. So on that note, I won't see you guys tomorrow because we're going to be off. Pray for me. I pray for you. I want you guys to have a wonderful Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we hope you come on back to the Shout Out Show. I'm Preacher Moss. This is the SOS. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say, I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the Shout Out Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30. On the Central Time. And, of course, we're going to do our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And, of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, time for you to go because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. Shout out.